God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Sonny. That was really beautiful. A little embarrassing, but very beautiful. Oh, yeah, I always forget. I have to raise the mic. So how many of you live in La Cañada? Raise your hands. I'm curious. And the rest of you, obviously, from regions nearby. You know, it's really, my life is a very rich life. I'm a very, very lucky man. So last week I spoke in Denmark, and this week in La Cañada. Last week I traveled 23 hours to get to my speech. Today I traveled 1 minute. And paid accordingly, I might add. I'm here because I want to be here. I'm here also because Sonny asked me. Have any of you ever been asked to do something by Sonny Sardo? I wonder if there's anyone in the world who has ever finally said no. It is not easy, which is to his credit. Well, everybody, it's a difficult time in our country. I never fool my listeners. I have too much respect for them, and I don't hype the bad and I don't hype the good. But we are in trouble, and I'll explain why in a moment. But I'll just give you an idea from here in La Cañada. When was it? Was it Sue? When did I speak for the Chabad here in La Cañada? Last year? It wasn't this year, it was last year? Yeah, it must have been last year. That's my wife, by the way. So Sue waved to everybody so they'll see you. Yeah, she's busy answering my question. Sue waved to everybody so they can say hi. There she is. You have no idea the role she plays in my life, but it'll embarrass her to extol her importance. So last year, I was asked, and I even volunteered actually, for the first time, La Cañada has a synagogue, and it was created by this group called Chabad, C-H-A-B-A-D. They're all over the world. They're in all 50 states. They're a remarkable Orthodox Jewish group. You've seen probably pictures of them on Hanukkah menorah lightings in different places. Anyway, I was very, very delighted that they would open up one here. They're an outreach to the world, to Jews in particular, but to non-Jews. They have tremendous work in rehab for anybody of every creed, race, etc. So I said, I'll speak for you for free and help you raise the funds for your opening. 2 hours before my lecture, which really was critical to his being able financially to open, I tested positive for COVID. So, now I could tell the story. I hope he doesn't get in trouble for this. But his attitude was exactly the attitude that people in general should have had. So I felt morally obligated to tell him. Frankly, as far as I was concerned, I had a sniffle. I mean, and I had already had it before. I can sell my antibodies. So I go, Rabbi, I feel awful, but I gotta tell you, I have COVID. And his answer was, so what? By the way, your applause really means a lot to me. That, in a nutshell, do you know if I had said this to a Democratic group, the man and I would be booed. It would be the antithetical reaction. First of all, half of them would still be wearing masks. But aside from that, this was so revealing. I'm going to talk about this on the radio, your reaction to that story. It's so telling. The people on the left, I pity them, even though they're wrecking the country. I pity them individually. They live in fear. of life and of death. They're just scared of everything. They're scared of male-female differences. They're scared, it doesn't matter, they're scared. They're scared of Alar and apples. Remember that one? They're just scared. They walk around petrified. So the rabbi goes, so what? And I'm thinking, all right, that's my man. I go, Rabbi, I don't give a damn either. And he goes, hey, listen, I'll hug you. I'm healthy. I'm going to hug you. And that was it. I was 30 feet from the front row. Nobody was, quote unquote, endangered anyway. He did the rational thing. He canceled the book signing. That was true. Okay, I wasn't going to be, you know, within 2 feet of hundreds of people. That's okay. But I gave the speech. I was perfectly fine, by the way, obviously, to give a speech. But I'm telling you this, A, because it's just something you should know. And B, because of what happened prior to the speech here in La Cañada, California. Prior to the speech, the rabbi, and Chabad is known for being non-political. Because that's their message is religion and companionship and getting people out of drugs. So they're very careful about not being political. And he puts he has a Facebook page for Chabad of La Cañada, and the La Cañada, he went to the La Cañada Facebook page. That's what it was. And asked them to put up, and he put up a message that Dennis Prager will be speaking at the opening of the Chabad of La Cañada on such and such a date. And within a day, they took it down. And he tried again, and they took it down again. And they told him that they will not allow him, a rabbi and a synagogue, to publicize a speaker because they don't like me. I don't care if they like me. It is of no concern. I care if they like free speech. That's all that matters. I'm not the issue. These are lowlifes who run the La Cañada Facebook page. You should know about that. These are lowlifes. These are threats to the most sacred freedom the human species has, is free speech. It is the most sacred freedom. And the left hates it. You know why? I know the left like I know my family. I've been studying the left since I was in graduate school. I was at the Russian Institute at Columbia University. And I learned Russian for one reason, just to be able to read the Soviet communist newspaper Pravda, which I got to be able to do, then went to communist countries repeatedly. I want you to understand something. There has never been an instance since Vladimir Lenin in 1917 where the left was in power and allowed free speech. It doesn't exist at Columbia University. It didn't exist in the Soviet Union. It doesn't exist on the La Cañada Facebook page. You must understand that. Liberals allow free speech. Conservatives allow free speech. Leftists do not. These people are leftists. And left is a bad thing to be. It is a morally bad place to be. Everything you touch, you ruin. But it's really important that you know what the battle is about. And that is a good example from here. I never told the story because it's most germane to you. Oh, well, actually, I did. I said it on the radio now that I think of it. At the time, I wanted anger to build up against the people who run the La Cañada Facebook page. It's really a disgrace. This was a town that was so, in its history, my wife grew up here. She grew up a block from where we live. She knows this place. I mean, it was so America-loving when she grew up. And a good chunk of its citizenry loathes this country because they loathe everything that is good. I was just reading a Gallup poll that one of the greatest predictors of whether you're a Democrat or a Republican is whether you're married. Isn't that interesting? In other words, if you lead a healthy and happy life, the odds are overwhelming you'll be a Republican. I have a riddle that I made up years ago. What do you call a happy black American? A Republican. It's getting to be, what do you call a happy white American? Same thing. We're happier. It's amazing. Given how much hate is directed against us, we're still happier. And one of the reasons is we get married. I've been divorced, and I still hold that marriage makes you happier. It's a better way to live to be married for the vast majority of people. Feminism told women, however, that a woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle. It's a very funny phrase, I have to admit it. Stupid, destructive, has caused tens of millions of American women to be unhappy, but it was funny, I got to admit it. But it's not true. A woman without a man is not a fish without a bicycle. A man without a woman and a woman without a man, for most people, is like a fish without water, not without a bicycle. We're made to be with each other. Doesn't always work out. I'm a living example. But so what? A lot of things don't work out. Doesn't mean that you don't attempt it. Doesn't mean it isn't a better way or a better thing to do. Isn't that something? That it's the greatest one of the greatest predictors, if not the greatest predictor of whether you'll be a Republican or a Democrat. It's just whether you're married. Single people are far more likely to be Democrats. One of the reasons, the Gallup poll didn't mention it, but one of the reasons I'll mention is because single people rely on the government instead of a partner. They marry the state. That's happiness, isn't it? Who's your husband? Newsom. Biden. Oh, are you lucky or what? So you also know every poll, not the polls that are conducted by conservatives, every poll has conservatives as happier than liberals, and everybody's happier than leftists. There is no such thing as a happy leftist, by the way. You know, my most subversive hour, Sonny mentioned it, but he didn't mention it in terms of being subversive. The most subversive of my 15 hours on radio a week is my happiness hour. It has nothing to do with politics, but if it works, you leave the left. Because as soon as you become happy, you leave the left. Every leftist is angry. Every single one. If you're not angry, you're not on the left. There are individually angry conservatives, individually angry liberals, but as a group, that's what they are. They're angry. I don't know why they're angry. When I speak at college campuses, my favorite part is the end of my speech when there are microphones that have been set up for students to come up and ask questions. And I always say, if you disagree with me, you get first question or first comment. It doesn't even have to be a question. I'll never forget one. I don't remember which university, but they're all interchangeable, so it doesn't matter. So she gets up and she goes, "Are you saying that women in America are not oppressed?" There are moments in my life, you can't know this because you're not in my brain. I'm in my brain. I actually start humming the Twilight Zone theme. I'm not kidding. When that girl said that, I did a do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And I have to shut it off because I start humming along with it. And it would be insulting. And I said, wait a minute, do I infer from your question that you think you're oppressed in this country because you're a female? You're at a $40,000 a year university in some unbelievably plush dorm with an Olympic-sized swimming pool, air conditioning and heating, your meals paid. You're doing nothing for society whatsoever. You haven't had to work a day in your life. You're oppressed. Isn't this a new definition of oppression? I wish the whole world were as oppressed as this girl was. But you know what? she had never heard an adult look at her in the face and say, "You're not oppressed." She had never heard that, because every one of her teachers at any college in this country, basically, with a handful of exceptions like Hillsdale, let's say, tells her, "Oh, you're oppressed, you're oppressed." By the way, you must understand, one of the conclusions to be drawn from this is that if enough people tell you anything, you'll believe it. Half this country believes men give birth. You're allowed to laugh, because you only have one other choice, to cry. And as I always say, I prefer to laugh than to cry. But it is worthy of tears. Half this country believes men give birth. It is not possible to come up with a more absurd statement. The earth is flat is equivalent to men give birth. But if enough people told Americans that the earth is flat, that would be the position of the New York Times. The earth is flat. We have photos of the earth being round. Yes. We have photos of human beings coming out of a uterus. Men don't have uteruses, just the way it is. I know that's a very scandalous thing to say. So if you're from the La Cañada paper, you can report. Dennis Prager says only women have uteruses. It's a risky statement. You believe gigantic lies if you're on the left, or if you go to college, which is almost the same thing. I mean, do you understand to what we have sunk? Men give birth. Do you understand? Men menstruate. You got to watch it. It's on YouTube. It's got millions of views. It went viral 2.5 years after it happened. I was on Bill Maher's show exactly 3 years ago, right before the lockdowns. I never say before COVID. COVID wasn't the issue. The lockdowns were. And that's right. It's worthy of applause. You're entirely right. Always say lockdowns. Never say COVID. So I was on the show. You should watch it. It's revelatory. So he and the panel. I was the one conservative in the building, not just on the panel, including the entire audience. Which, by the way, I get a kick out of. I actually welcome those moments. And he says, so President Trump was still president. Trump tells all these lies. I go, well, they don't compare to the left's lies. And he goes, like what? I said, like America is systemically racist. It's a gigantic left-wing lie. It's the least racist country of multi-races in the history of Earth. And I'll tell you another one, Bill. The left says men menstruate. And he starts laughing at me. The whole panel starts laughing at me. The whole audience starts laughing at me. This is a very important little anecdote. This is 3 years ago, just 3 years ago. I said on national television that the left says men menstruate. Bill Maher looks at me, laughing, says, "Who says that?" And now everyone says that. You know how quickly people believe lies? The speed is breathtaking. These are all very sad lessons. And I admit to you, it's sad to me because I thought more highly of my fellow American. That half of this country believes men menstruate is sick. Most young people probably do, because they go to college, the citadel of lies. This is the state of the country. That's why they suppress, back to the beginning, why the La Cañada Facebook page suppressed the rabbi's announcement that I'm coming. They always, I mean always, suppress dissent. Thousands of doctors come out and say that masking doesn't work. It's called misinformation. Thousands of doctors around the world used hydroxychloroquine to benefit. Misinformation. And as of January, in this state, a law passed, because they could pass a law that you have to walk on one leg, and it would be a law if the Democrats wanted it. They can pass anything they want. They have a supermajority. They passed a law that if a doctor in California spreads disinformation or misinformation, they can lose their medical license. And what is disinformation or misinformation? Things like ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine worked on my patients. The first time that I know of in medical history in this country where doctors can say, I used a drug which is completely legal, completely safe. It's one of the 50 safest, most widely used drugs on earth, hydroxychloroquine. There are people who take it for decades and no ill effects. At worst, it is harmless. At best, it'll save your life or hospitalization if you take it early enough. I took it for a year and a half. It may be part of the reason my 2 bouts with COVID were nothing. Nothing. And I'm not a kid. I think I'm a kid, but I'm not a kid. But I don't know. There was a guy, I don't remember what, I think Spain, who said, if you could change your sex, why can't you change your age? So, yeah, he went to court with it. He tried to change his age on his birth certificate. I don't feel my age. If you are what you feel, why the hell am I my age? I feel 26. There you go. I do actually, by the way, just for the record, as it happens. So why do they suppress dissent? Whether it's medical doctors or me speaking for a rabbi in La Cañada or wherever it is? Because wherever dissent is allowed, the left loses. They depend on suppressing free speech to survive. If there's free speech, there's no left. There are liberals and conservatives, but there's no left. That has been true, as I said, since Vladimir Lenin. That is why they tried to stop. Just last week, Ann Coulter went to Cornell, where she graduated from, and they shouted her down. She spoke for 7 minutes. They just kept shouting and screaming and banging drums. And of course, they allowed it at Cornell. They said it was wrong, but they allowed it. They didn't kick everybody out who did it. She spoke for 7 minutes. How come we don't do that to their speakers? We welcome dissent because we think maybe we're wrong. Let's hear what you have to say. No problem. Speak your mind. They don't have that view on the left. Speak your mind is the antithesis of leftism. They fear, correctly I might add, that if a Dennis Prager or an Ann Coulter or a Heather McDonald or a Ben Shapiro or a Dave Rubin or a Jordan Peterson shows up for 90 minutes, it will undo 4 years of indoctrination. And they're right. We undo it in 90 minutes. So they are properly scared of our showing up on a campus. They're right to fear it because these kids never heard these ideas and they make sense. Our positions are based on making sense. To say that only women give birth is not a political view. It's beyond belief. That you have to be a conservative today to say only women give birth is an ode to conservatism. It's just praise of conservatives. So you must understand why they suppress speech. They cannot coexist with free speech, whether it's a doctor or a speaker or a rabbi. They can't handle it, and they're right. They can't. This is the battle, and we in California. The question I most often ask anywhere I speak in the country is, why are you still in California? By the way, I don't have a political answer. I don't even have a particularly idealistic answer. Well, it is idealistic, I guess, but it's not politically idealistic. I have so many people I love here, and I'm not going to leave them. And that's it. I just they're more important to me. Anyway, the fact is, there are more of us in California than anywhere in the country. There are 8 million Republicans here. It's a lot of us. There's no reason, I will say this to you, there's no reason to be lonely if you're a conservative in California. Okay, if you're a conservative in New York City, by definition, you're lonely. That is true. There are none of you. But we have 7,999,999 others here. So I hope none of you are lonely, at least because of ideology. I'll tell you where loneliness, or at least some degree of it, does play a role, though, in politics, and this is also new in America. If you voted for Donald Trump, you may have a child who won't talk to you. I'd like to see a show of hands. You don't have to be embarrassed because it's not necessarily you. If you know of a family where an adult child does not talk to a parent, raise your hand. Please keep them up, and I'd like everybody to look around at how many hands are up. Okay, thank you. And these are people who know. A lot of people won't tell their friends, my son won't talk to me, my daughter won't talk to me. That, forgive me, is evil. Yes. Not to talk to your parent if they didn't horribly abuse you, or they're not Charlie Manson, is indefensible. Indefensible. I'd like to know if there are any conservative adults who don't speak to a parent because the parent voted for Joe Biden. It's hard to imagine, right? And any one of us would say, what are you, out of your mind? You talk to your father. He voted for Biden, so what? That's your father, man. It's your father, girl. What's wrong with you? Most of us on the right actually believe in this quaint law from this quaint doctrine called the Ten Commandments. Honor your father and mother. Doesn't come with an asterisk unless they voted wrong. God, I have a deep anger at people who won't speak to a parent because of their politics. You have no idea. I believe we're talking at least 1 million cases, probably millions. People who won't let their parents see their grandchildren because they're a Republican or a conservative or a Trump voter. They don't want to poison their children with grandpa's views. God, they must be incredibly insecure about their own views. Grandpa's visit on Sunday is going to poison your kid. If my father were living and he were a leftist, forget liberal, of course I'd want my kids to see him. It wouldn't. First of all, I want to teach my kids, honor your father and mother. I'm religious, so I actually take the Ten Commandments seriously. I had Juan Williams on my show last week. To his great credit, most people on the left don't come on my show. So he came on and I treated him very nicely. I always treat people I differ with on the air nicely, because I want him to come back. It's a very selfish motive, to be perfectly honest. And I want others to see, I'm not going to yell at you. He had written a piece just a few weeks ago that you're probably not aware of this. I do a service to fellow conservatives. I read the New York Times every day. You owe me. I just want you to know. You should send me a cigar just for doing that. And by the way, I read the New York Times for the same reason I read Pravda when I was in graduate school. I want to know what the left says. Almost I would say every other week at least, there is an article in the New York Times attacking Christian nationalism. Now, folks, almost all of my time in life is spent with Christians. I'm a religious Jew, but I work with, talk to Christians. I'm a Christian fan, as it happens. A lot of wonderful people in this country because they're Christians. Just a fact. Anyway, he writes, like the New York Times does, about Christian nationalism. In all of my time with Christians, I never heard the term. I don't even know what they're talking about. What is Christianity is a religion, so what is Christian nationalism? I don't understand it. it's a rare time where I don't understand the opposition. So they make up this lie that Christians who are conservative are Christian nationalists, which is a dirty word for the left. So I said to Juan Williams, it's recorded. You could hear it. You could see it because my show's now videoed. And I said, Juan, I don't quite follow here. What is Christian nationalism? And finally he goes, well, it really comes down to, are you ready? The 10 Commandments. And I'm thinking, you gotta be kidding. Advocacy of the 10 Commandments is a form of Christian nationalism? I guess Moses was a Christian nationalist. Who'd have known? Who'd have thunk? I learn new biblical insights all the time. Yeah, Moses, 1,200 years before Christ, gave the 10 Commandments from God, and he was a Christian nationalist. Do you understand? They live in a make-believe world. 10 Commandments is Christian nationalism, like men give birth. It's equivalent. They just make up lies, and then they believe it. I believe he's a sweet guy. I believe he believed what he said. The advocacy of the 10 Commandments is Christian nationalism. I guess I'm a Christian nationalist too. That's all I push is the 10 Commandments. I wrote a book on the 10 Commandments. I wrote the most I've written in my Bible commentary of the first 5 books is on the 10 Commandments. They're 500 pages each book. I'm up to the 4th volume, Numbers. And the most I've written on any one subject has been the 10 Commandments. I have an interesting thought on the 10 Commandments. And it is this. You want to defund the police? I have a method. Have everybody live by the 10 Commandments. Then you can defund the police. That's all you need. But if you advocate the 10 Commandments, you're a Christian nationalist. Mind-boggling. What do they have instead of the 10 Commandments? I'm serious. We have the 10 Commandments, we who are Jewish and Christian and believe in the Bible. What do they have? It's an interesting question, no? What is their substitute? Government. That's right. That's right. That's why I have a saying. The bigger the government, the smaller the God. That's the way it works. You're going to either have to answer to God or the state. Big states, big governments killed 100 million people in the 20th century. I'm not a fan of big government. I know the day I became a Republican, because I'm a Jew from New York. On my birth certificate it says Party Democrat. And you can't change that. You can change your sex, but you cannot change your party. So of course I grew up, liberal Democrat, never leftist. I hated the left from the day I could begin thinking and knew what communism did. But I was a liberal Democrat. And then Ronald Reagan said one line: you don't need 90 minutes. You don't even need 5 minutes sometimes to change a life, because all our videos at PragerU were 5 minutes. You could do it in one line. He said government is not the solution, it's the problem. And I thought, holy crow, that's right. I'm not a Democrat. And I enlisted as a Republican. And that was the answer. The founders of this country understood the threat of the big state. Big government is vile. It cannot coexist with liberty. You choose, my friends, big government or big liberty. You can't have both. Anywhere, at any time. As we are seeing now in the United States. It is a moral issue of the first regard. The issue of big government. It's a deal with the devil. It's a Mephistophelian, that is from Mephistopheles, the devil. The devil is the diabolical agreement is this: you give us your liberty and we will give you free things. That's the deal. You give us your soul, because if we're not free, we have no soul. If you can't say what you want, do what you want, providing obviously it's not violent against the neighbor, your soul is taken away. That's what the left says. Give me your soul and we'll give you free lunch and free breakfast and free health care and free tuition and free daycare. You just give us your soul. And most people do that. And I'll tell you why. Because humans do not instinctively value freedom. They instinctively value being taken care of. That's the trade. Democrats are the party of we'll take care of you, and we're the party of you will take care of you. You will take care of your family, you will take care of your neighbor. And that's the beautiful way in which America was founded. Alexis de Tocqueville wrote the greatest description of America in the early 1800s in his Democracy in America. He's a brilliant French writer. And he spoke about how in America, little organizations, the church, the club, later like Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, they were formed to take care of our fellow citizens. Think of how many hospitals were built by churches and synagogues. Mount Sinai, Cedar Sinai, First Presbyterian Hospital, right? The Lutheran Hospital, the Catholic Hospital. That's what we believed. I take care of me, I take care of my family, I take care of my community. Then the left said, no, 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 no. We'll take care of you, we'll take care of your family, and we'll take care of your community. And because human nature says, great, I much more value being taken care of than I do liberty, I'll make that deal. And that's the deal. That's why America was the beacon of liberty in the world. It didn't make that deal. But gradually, beginning in the 1960s, the deal was more and more made with the so-called Great Society of Lyndon Johnson. We'll take care of everybody. You're a woman and you have children without a husband, don't worry about it. It's not an issue. We'll take care of you. It was very rare anywhere in America, including in black life. Today, almost 80% of black kids are born to an unwed mother. In the 1930s, it was like 20%. What changed? The 1930s was a hell of a lot more racist than today. They had Jim Crow laws then. So it's not racism. It was the government saying, specifically knocking on black citizens' doors, hey, don't worry, we'll take care of you. You don't have to have a husband. And whites now too, they're catching up. Hispanics are catching up. The message got out. Hey, I don't have to lead a responsible life. The state will take care of me. A professor, Amy Wax, professor at the University of Pennsylvania, it's an Ivy League school, at the law school, wrote an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer a few years ago. She and another law professor said, you know what? Middle-class values, they're the best ones. If everybody followed them, it'd be a great country. And what are they? Really tough ones. Graduate high school, get a job, get married, and then have children. That's it. If everybody followed that, the state would become almost unnecessary. I'm not an anarchist, we need a state, but it would be 1/4 the size it is now if people just did that. And do you know what happened? Hundreds of the law faculty at the University of Pennsylvania demanded that she no longer teach at the university. And she was barred from teaching first-year courses just for writing that people should graduate high school, get a job, get married, and then have children. Scandalous, isn't it, to advocate that? Gives you the sick state of the professoriate in the United States. That's what all this battle is about. That's why your being here is important. You have to fight. I'll end with this. The first most frequent question I get is, why do you stay in California? The second is, are you optimistic or pessimistic? So here's my answer. It's not a thought-through answer. It's exactly how I feel. I don't have two separate minds, one for the public and one in my life. That way I sleep well because I don't have to memorize what I said. So here's my answer. I have no use for optimism or pessimism, which I know sounds odd, but I'll give you my argument. I have only use for people fighting. And optimism and pessimism generally lead to not fighting. The optimist thinks everything will turn out all right, why fight? The pessimist, everything's going to be lousy, why fight? So I don't have use for either. I'm not telling you what to do, be an optimist or pessimist. I'm just saying it can easily stop you from fighting. The guys who stormed Normandy Beach were not optimistic. They peed in their pants. Optimists don't pee in their pants. They went on Normandy Beach anyway. That's my model. So I never ask, am I optimistic or pessimistic? I only ask, what do I have to do? That's what you all need to ask. That's why you're here, and I salute you. But a lot of people are not here, or anything to fight. Or they're afraid to speak up because they'll lose friends. But I don't know what kind of purchase of friends that is. You really want friends in your life that you can't say what you think with? Isn't that the whole point of a friend? Someone to whom you can open your heart to? Some people will lose their jobs if they speak up. I don't tell them to lose their jobs. It's not for me to say to somebody, get fired. But if that's not your immediate concern, you have to speak up. There's a young girl, she's 23, Julie Hartman, who has become very important to me in my life. I see her carrying this mission of mine on. And a 23-year-old is a very wonderful thing to have. I know her a grand total of a little over 2 years. It's a great story about her to show you what I mean by speaking up. I don't get to see all my mail. I get a lot. And so what I do periodically is I go through, on email you see subject. So I look at the subject. So if the subject is basically cursing me out, I open it up. I'm always fascinated by people who hate my guts. By the way, you'll find this of interest. I have an answer. If somebody says, "Oh, you're an effing da 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 da," and they actually use their name, I respond. And this is my usual response. Mr. So-and-so, it's never been a woman yet. Mr. So-and-so, I'm just curious, do you have children? I'm asking because I doubt you do. Because most fathers would be terribly embarrassed if their children saw what you wrote me. Sincerely yours, Dennis Prager. Interestingly, I never once got a response. It is interesting. You'd think if they had children, oh, my children are proud of me for cursing you out. Never got that. Anyway, I look at subjects, and then sometimes I open them up if I'm inclined. So I saw a little over 2 years ago in my public email folder, Harvard student, you changed my life. Now, to be honest, had it been University of Minnesota student, you've changed my life, I would have opened it up. But I admit the Harvard part added, because it's not the place you'd expect to get an email like that from. I opened it up. She spoke about reading my book, Still the Best Hope, my explanation of the left and of America. And anyway, it was an impressive letter. By sheer chance, she lives in Southern California. So I wrote back to her and I said, I'd love to meet you. You could come in and visit while I broadcast, come in and sit in on the show. So, given that Harvard had no classes at the time, because Harvard was the first university in the country to shut down, very fitting. The most prestigious college in the country was the most scared and the most irrational. So she came, visited the studio. I was impressed personally as I was through the letter. So I said to her, listen, you're more than welcome to come on the show after the commercial break and tell people how my books and PragerU affected you. But I have to be honest with you. I need to warn you that if you do come on my show, you will probably lose some friends, maybe some relatives, and you won't be the most popular student at your school, having appeared on the Dennis Prager show. So I sufficiently frightened her, which I wanted to do. I felt I was morally obligated. And she said, which I found very, very actually adorable. In other words, worthy of adoration. She said, is it okay with you if I call my mom? And I really liked that. I have to say, it made an impact on me. So I said, of course, go ahead. So I continued my show. She came back in, and I had no idea what she would say. I would not have bet in either direction. She said, I'm coming on. So she came on, and was very eloquent, et cetera, et cetera. It was a wonderful segment with her. 6 months later, she came back on. So I said, on the air, I said to her, so what happened after you came on my show? She said, exactly what you predicted. I lost friends that I had since elementary school, not yet relatives, I'm happy to say. And I had a somewhat tough time back at Harvard. Okay. I said, and then she said, I went through 2 weeks of hell. So of course I said, well, what happened after 2 weeks? She said, then I went to heaven. I said, how did that happen? She said, well, as a result of my publicly coming out, as it were, all these wonderful people entered my life that I never would have known of had I not come out of the closet. And that's my argument to all of you and to all others. When you come out of the closet as conservative, yes, you'll lose some friends, which is not a bad thing. I mean, life is short. You want to spend your time with people that share most of your values. It seemed to me, anyway. And that's the reward is you get new people who do share your values. So there is a case to be made. But whatever the argument is, you have to fight. I'm not asking you to storm Nazi machine guns or Japanese artillery in the Pacific. Just state your case. Put out an article that you read on your Facebook page or in Instagram or wherever you might be on social media. or just send it around to friends. But it's very important, because if we lose America, the world will enter a dark space, an age of cruelty that may make the 20th century look benign. And I'm not exaggerating. For the first time in American history, America is exporting bad ideas. I learned this, I knew this, but I learned it again in Denmark last week. The worst ideas in the world are coming from this wonderful country. For all of our history, the best ideas came out of America. That's how bad the left's damage is. So, my dear friends, I salute you for coming out today. God gave you about as nice a weather as you could possibly have. I mean, this is like perfect. And I want to thank you terrific people who made this possible. And next year, the Rose Bowl. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's an honor to be with you.